Hi guys, I hope you had a great weekend. So we're going to continue reading on in our book today. It's my goal to hopefully finish the book this week because we have so many people that are going to go back to in-person learning, and I didn't want to leave you hanging with 2 chapters left. So it's my goal to hopefully finish this week, which means we're going to have to read 2 chapters a day, but really it's like a picture in the chapter, and the pictures are very long, so it should be okay. So that's going to be our main focus this week, is just getting through the book. Remember, when we're finished, you can do a book talk on it. The only problem is all your book talks have to be turned in by Friday, because Friday is the last day of the 9 weeks. So you're going to have to finish the book Friday and then do your book talk right after. And Friday, since it's the last day, I'm not going to assign anything new. So you'll have that work time to get anything done. And that would include the book talk. So I don't remember exactly how many points this is worth. I can double check and I can let you know tomorrow, or I'll put it in the comments below so I can check after I make the video. Okay, so we are ready for chapter 11 today. Last week, I know it was a while ago since we read, but Josie and Hollis finally made it to the house and branches. They got everything inside. Hollis got Josie all settled. And then in the picture that you guys read, Stephen and the old man were fighting a lot. And Hollis made the decision that she was going to go to the mountaintop by herself, kind of to just declare that she's a brand new Hollis, she's going to have a family, and she just wants to kind of have that moment to herself, finally I've been wanting this for so long, and this is what I want to do to mark that occasion. So we're ready for chapter 11. It's on page 101 if you're in the actual book. Okay, so chapter 11. The next afternoon, I went from room to room, taking my time, looking at everything, almost everything. I didn't go into Izzy, the old man's bedroom. That was their private place. Photographs filled the guest room wall, and I spent a long time looking at each one. I waited to get to the end to see if the one of me was still there. First, there was the young Izzy in a two-piece bathing suit, and then the old man sawing down a dead tree, sawdust coloring his beard. There were several of Stephen, one without his front teeth, in a bunny costume, one sitting on the hood of the truck, and one with a fishing net in his hand, his head thrown back laughing. And the one of me was still there. I was sharpening a pencil with pale pink shavings falling in a pile on my drawing paper. I ran my finger over. Still there, in the row with the others, still belonging with them. Stephen's room was next. A mess of a room, socks on the floor, jumble of string, a couple of keys, and a photo on the dresser. A photo I couldn't even make out, blurs of greens and blues, and something in the center that it might have been a boat. Behind me, Josie called, "I found boots. I'm going to wear them." "It's too cold to go out," I called back. "You'll freeze." But the outside door slammed, and I went to the window. "Josie?" I put my hand on the glass. Cold air drifted in around the panes. Josie was wearing Izzy's wading boots, which went well up to her thighs. She twirled in the snow, arms out, fingers spread. It made me dizzy to watch her. After a moment, she tipped over, but it was an easy fall, making me think of snow angels. Her scarf blew across the smooth whiteness, a scrap of color. She was up again, zigzagging, and I thought about going after her, but she disappeared back into the line of evergreens. I hurried a little, grabbing my jacket. The thermometer outside the kitchen window read 5 degrees, and next to the window on the wall, the calendar was still at August. August. I went out to the back door, calling her, and then in the cold stillness I could hear her singing, "Over the River." I went after her, my feet heavy, twirling as I passed the circle she made, singing back and through the woods. She leaned against a small tree, staring at the ice strip of dark water that ran between the chunks of ice. "Isn't it beautiful?" I said. "I love to walk in the snow." She was shivering again, looking up at me, suddenly bewildered. "But why aren't we home? And what happened to Beatrice?" So we're seeing again Josie still having that memory loss. I led her back into the house and into the warm room with the bright blue rugs and the huge couch. I found a robe of Izzy's and wrapped it around her. We sat by the fireplace watching the shadows dance over the walls until it grew dark outside and we slept. In the morning, points of light danced over my eyes. I raised my hand to I raised my hand to my face. Sun was melting tiny swirls of ice on the window. Somewhere outside was a faint buzzing sound. It wasn't close, nothing to worry about, but what was it? Someone using a saw deep in the woods? A snowmobile? The sound gradually died away, and I stood up slowly, thinking about breakfast. There were choices, thanks to Izzy. Cans of pineapple juice, blueberry jam, vegetables shining against their glass jars, rows of Dinty Moore stew. Izzy's treasures, not mine. I'd pay her back someday, I told myself. Pay back all of it. Lighten up, Stephen said in my head. I had to smile. That's really what he would have said. I unclenched my hands and took another look outside. Footprints crisscrossed the snow. Our footprints. I thought about them uneasily, glancing up at the sky, wishing for more snow to hide them. I put water on to boil and popped a piece of Josie's bread in the toaster. A mouse lived somewhere in the house. Poor mouse, he'd have to leave now that Henry was here. I wiped away the mouse's leavings with a brush, and then we sat at the table in front of the window, with Josie's wood pieces on one side and my food lined up in front of me. After I ate, I looked at the tall figure Josie was doing of me. A long piece of wood, spaces drilled in the sides where the arms would be. A face beginning to take shape, and a mouth began, a small pointed nose, and a tiny cut on the forehead. I put my hand up on my own forehead, feeling that indentation. And then Josie was there, yawning, her hair a whoosh around her head. She padded over to the back window. Sun today, she said, holding her hands out as if to warm them against the glass. And a branch that's blown onto the step. Holly, I think. I took the last bit of toast crust and crunched it in my mouth. The sun on the ocean makes a path sometimes. Josie reached for a chocolate bar. You think you can walk on it? Walk clear across the ocean, too? She stopped, and I tried to help her. To England? To France? To where I belong. And she sat at the table and began to work. As I put toast and hot tea in front of her, she glanced around. What? I asked. I'm wondering about Beatrice, she said, and smiled. And sandpaper. Your face needs smoothing. There might be sandpaper in the shed. I get it. I didn't have to look at the truck again. I'd pretend it wasn't there. I opened the back door of the blast of cold air. So cold your teeth hurt, the old man had said, and I saw the holly branch thick with bright red berries that had blown across the step. Stephen holding a sprig of holly out to me. Peace, Holly. I'll get my jacket, I told Josie, and I shrugged into it, pulled on my gloves, and went outside for the sandpaper. The cold went through me, the smell of it sharp and clean. The muster woman was far away, probably looking for me. She wouldn't have a clue. On the way back, I bent down and picked up the holly to bring into the house. I gave Josie the squares of sandpaper and put the branch in one of Izzy's vases in front of the big window, thinking about Christmas. Maybe 10 more days. Josie and I would have our own. I cut boughs off of pine, and we'd have packs of popcorn to make, and I would be like Christmas in a book by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I was happier than I had been anywhere, except I didn't belong in that house in Branches, not anymore. I wondered what Christmas would be like in the old man's winter house. What would it be like this year? I snipped off that thought before I finished it. Wasn't it enough that I was here in Branches with Holly in the window? If only I could stay forever. Something else the old man had told me about, fishing in the winter. The fish went deep, but if you caught one, the eating was an experience. An experience. The old man used words like that. Fish for dinner, dotted with butter. No butter. Fish smothered in tomato sauce and string beans jarred last summer. A real meal, the way normal people ate. Better than normal. I know you like fish, I said to Josie. Goldfish. I had one in a bowl, I think. She glanced at Henry, who slept in the middle of the old man's blue rugs. I don't trust Henry, though. To eat, I mean, for us. She looked at me, shocked. I'd never eat a goldfish. I could feel the laughter bubble up. Pickerel, I said. Bass. I'm not sure what's around this time of year. Ah, yes. She picked up her knife to shave curly bits off the wooden feet. The old man's fishing equipment was hanging on the far wall. Did I really want to go out into that icy world? Of course I did. In Stephen's bedroom, I gathered things to keep warm, his old green sweater for a scarf around my neck, an extra pair of socks. I found a towel in the hall closet to wrap my head like a turban, and one of Izzy's large sweaters to put over the whole thing. I was ready with the pole in my hand, and Josie laughed at the sight of me as I passed her. The abominable snowman, I said, and then I was outside, trying to decide. I could fish from the bank or the old man's bridge. The bank was closer, so I walked along the tree line and down to the spot almost in front of the house. I swung the pole, lure on the line, over the ice and the narrow stream of water. I didn't know how long I stood there fishing, but after a while I leaned back against the bare maple tree, watching movement on the other side of the river. Just the quickest bit of color. A squirrel, a raccoon, but then I saw something larger, maybe a deer. It took one more moment to realize that it was a person. Maybe a fisherman was standing there, back along the trees, and if I had seen him, he might have been able to see me. The pole slid out of my hands as I lurched back towards the holly bushes. Another quick step, and Stephen's sweater pulled away on a branch. I looked back to see the pole on the snowy bank. It had sunk into the snow, so it couldn't be seen. There was just a narrow indentation in the snow, and it might have been only a branch if someone had spotted it. My mouth was dry. I looked across the river again, but there was no movement on the other side. A scoop of snow slid off one of the branches. A blue jay teetered on another. I turned and ran the last few steps towards the house and up on the porch. I reached for the door and closed and locked it back of me, leaned against it inside and taking deep breaths. What is it? Josie asked. I shook my head. Maybe another fisherman. Don't worry. Christmas was coming. Maybe it was someone cutting down a tree or poaching on the old man's woods. All right. It was all right. He hadn't seen me. We were safe. Josie put on her scarf and her coat and wandered outside. To breathe for a moment, she told me. I stayed near the window watching, but there wasn't anyone there. No one at all. So Hollis is like really freaked out because if someone sees her, then they'll know that something's up because there's not supposed to be anybody in the house at that time. So she's kind of worried that if it was a fisherman or somebody else that they would have seen her and then maybe known that something wasn't quite right. All right, so we're going to read the 10th picture. It's called Hollis Woods. I know what people mean when they say they feel as if they're floating. That's the way I felt, as if my feet hadn't attached to the ground, as if they were bouncing off the floor, touching lightly and bouncing again. And inside me, as if bubbles were drifting and bumping gently into one another. I was happy. No, that doesn't even describe it. I was jubilant, ecstatic. I drew it all using pencils, yellows and oranges, pinks and blues. I drew purple shoes on my feet and wings on my shoulders. My eyes were closed, the way you see in pictures of angels sometimes, with their eyelashes down on their cheeks. So does it make sense that I wasn't thinking? That all that floating and all those bubbles made me think that I could do anything? And so that last week, all I thought about was going to the top of the old man's mountain and shouting down to the whole world. I even knew what I was going to say. Here I am, Hollis Woods, who doesn't deserve to be in a family. Tough Hollis Woods, running away Hollis Woods. Look at me. I climbed the mountain. Now I belong. So she's kind of talking there about how she felt so happy that last week that she was with Stephen and his family. And before she had to go live with the stucco woman, remember she was going to have to go back while things got situated, and then she'd be able to go live with them for forever. And she's talking about how she was so happy that she wasn't really thinking clearly at that point and maybe not making the best decisions, which so far we've read that the truck was in some sort of accident. We've learned that whatever happened, Hollis blames herself for. And we've learned that she ran away because of the incident. So that's kind of the pieces that we have so far. We're not really sure quite what all of that means yet, but we'll find out this week. So that's it on the reading for today. You have a small activity to do. Go ahead and check that out, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.